compassion, essentially. Meditating on compassion for ourselves, compassion for others, thinking how wonderful it would be if all such beings were free from suffering. May they be free from every form of suffering. May I myself free them from suffering. And then visualizing, actually taking upon, thinking, may all the suffering of sentient beings ripen upon me. So we started with thinking, may all my own suffering ripen upon me in the sense of like coming and destroying my self-centered mind, my selfish attitude, visualized as a black ball in the heart. So we're meditating on first compassion for ourselves. Thinking, may all my suffering, I'll put it on this selfish attitude. May it be destroyed. And then we were thinking about the suffering of one other person whom we're close to, whom we naturally have affection for. So in the meditation on compassion, the next thing would be generate compassion for one stranger. Think of one person who you don't know. Maybe you've just seen them around or heard of them, and think of the sufferings they have, and then generate the wish, may all of their suffering ripen upon me. And then visualize with each inhalation, then you visualize their suffering coming out in the form of black smoke, turning into a laser beam and destroying the selfish attitude of your heart. And then you'd move on to one enemy, meaning one person whom you put in the category of antagonist, or you tend to dislike. So then you visualize that person in front of you. Think of all the problems, the discomfort, dis-ease that they experience. Generate a wish, may I free them from every form of suffering. And then as you inhale, imagine their suffering comes into you. Again, becomes a lightning bolt, destroys the self-centered attitude of your heart. So, but in order to get through all 11 steps, we'll skip that for now. So you can do that in your own time. Those later parts of meditation on compassion. Now we want to go to meditation on giving and love. So meditation on loving kindness. So whereas compassion is observing the problems that ourselves or others have and wishing to be free from those, then loving kindness or affection or metta is observing other beings and wishing that they have happiness, wishing that they have well-being. So happiness takes many different forms. It can be physical well-being, mental well-being, mental peace, all spiritual qualities. It can be prosperity, all the relationships go well, that they have success in their career or whatever their endeavors they have. So first, again, we start with ourselves, observing ourselves, and again, there's these three levels of intensity. Thinking how wonderful it would be if I had perfect happiness. May I have happiness, and then may I cause that to happen, or may I cause myself to have happiness. Is love for myself, and then love for others. So again, first we start with someone that we naturally have affection towards, a friend or family member, and then we can go to a stranger, and then last, because it's most difficult, then we meditate on love for people we tend to dislike, an enemy. So after with ourselves, then we go to a person who's a friend or family member. So think of one person first. Think how wonderful it would be. If they had happiness. So whatever they have happen, if they have, everyone has some degree of happiness, right? So whatever degree of happiness they have now, think may they have more. And you can be creative. Think of whatever form it might take for that person. If there's someone who's lonely, think may they have friendships. If there's someone who's unhealthy, may they have better health. If there's someone who's very worried, may they have peace and ease, of confidence, and so forth. So you think of this one person. Think of may they have happiness in whatever form that takes. So that's the attitude of love, and then the visualization is. Then we think, may I cause them to have happiness? So then we think, and this is giving, right? So we think, whatever positive things I have, be it my possessions, my money or wealth, my knowledge, my positive qualities of my mind, even my roots of virtue, the positive energy of virtuous actions I've done in the past. Whatever good things I have, I give that all the way, even my body. Imagine, I give that all the way to them, and may it transform into whatever brings them well-being, whatever brings them happiness. Right? So as we exhale, when we were meditating on compassion, is as we inhale, we imagine taking on the suffering of others. Here, as we exhale, we imagine giving away all of our body, our mind, our possessions, our roots of virtue, all giving away all those to this other person, and they as we give them away, it transforms into whatever is most beneficial for that person, whatever is most helpful for that person. Any questions about how to meditate like that, how to visualize? It's clear? Ask questions now, or else you'll be confused while we're sitting here for quite 3 minutes. Okay, so we'll start by thinking about ourselves, thinking, may I be happy? Generating love for ourselves. May I be happy? May I be well? So with ourselves, again, it's like we can just leave the visualization, because how do we give away our own things to ourselves? It doesn't really make sense. So we'll do that for a minute, just thinking, may I be well, may I be happy, generating love for ourselves. And then after a minute, so I'll prompt you, then we'll think about someone else and meditate on loving kindness for someone else, and then combine that with the visualization. Okay? So first get comfortable in meditation posture, and then meditate on metta, directed at yourself. So now shift your focus of attention to someone else. Think about someone, your mother or father or another family member or friend. So visualize, imagine them seated directly in front of you. So first just think, try to generate the attitude, may they be well, may they be happy. The attitude of loving kindness directed towards them. And then in addition, visualize a stranger and an antagonist, somebody you tend to dislike, also seated in front of you, and try to generate the same attitude towards them. May they be well, may they be happy. And then finally try to combine this meditation with the visualization. So with each time you exhale, so as you breathe out, imagine giving away all of your possessions, your roots of virtue, your happiness, even your own body. Imagine giving it away, and it transforms into whatever brings well-being, brings happiness, and brings lasting kind of satisfaction to first the friend, then the stranger, and then if you get to it, then the enemy. Yeah. So just try visualizing like that for a minute or so. finally, take a couple minutes and try to combine the two meditations. So with each inhalation, so first focused on one friend. So with each inhalation, imagine you take on their suffering. Imagine, may their suffering ripen upon me. And then as you inhale, their suffering comes out of them in the form of black smoke. As it comes into you, it turns into a powerful laser beam, destroys the self-centered attitude at your heart. And then as you exhale, you give away, may they have every happiness. You imagine giving away all your possessions, your roots of virtue, and even your body, in whatever form is most beneficial to that person. Right? So try to do that for a minute or so, and then move on to a stranger, and if you can, to one antagonist. So try to combine this giving and taking. So we'll stop there. So that is the fifth step from the method of exchanging self and others for generating bodhicitta, or giving and taking, and it's the 8th and 9th step from the combined method of 11 steps. So now we're on the 10th. The 10th step is generating this extraordinary attitude. Maybe are there any questions from that giving and taking practice. I know it's kind of a, involved, sort of complicated practice a little bit. Usually a lot of questions arise from doing that.
Sometimes you feel overwhelmed when you do that practice. At least I feel.
Yeah.
You know, you feel like it's incredible that, so I don't know, it's a kind of joy, but it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it could be like that. So how do you deal with it?
I don't know, actually Geshe Damru told me not to do this, to do the other one, 7-fold cause and effect.
Oh, okay, not to do giving and taking.
Yeah.
Yeah, could be like that. I mean, one thing that can't help us think, well, it's not like the suffering of other beings is actually going to ripen on me. It's just it's a mental training.
Yeah, it's not that it's a kind of happiness, but it's uncomfortable.
I see. Yeah.
But it's very scary also to think of laser beams attacking your heart.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Very disturbing, and
Well, you could visualize. You could imagine something else than laser beams. Like, just like. What would you find? Sun rays. Yeah, like sun rays. Sun rays are the darkness of selfishness, or that turns into a flower. Yeah, the selfishness turns into a flower or something. Or like, like a stream of warm water or something dissolves it away. Anything that you understand the basic meaning though is that there's this bad thing that you want to eliminate. So, yeah. But it should be something powerful though, because the idea is that this self-centered attitude is something we've had from a long time ago. So it's a very strong habit. It's something very strong. It's difficult to make it go away. So we need a very powerful thing to purify it.
years ago, Khamse Rinpoche made us do this. But I don't remember now the exact way he made us do it. It's about 7 years ago, 8 years ago. I was very scared. And he said, don't be scared. And he made us do this. But he didn't say, give away your body. Because you added that also.
Yeah.
That was
more scary.
Disturbing.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
He only talked of give away your happiness and take their suffering.
Yeah.
And before we did it, he said, I know some of you are scared, but don't be scared.
Right.
There's nothing to be scared about.
Yeah.
But of course he didn't bring the body into it.
Right.
He also didn't bring laser beams into it.
Okay.
So he did it in a slightly different way.
Right.
Though I was scared, I could do it.
Yeah.
At this time I was very sort of disturbed with this whole laser beam thing.
Okay.
And giving away my body also.
Yeah.
It shows how much we cling on to the body, in a sense.
Yeah, can be. Yeah, also. Yeah, I mean, also it's a visualization. It's not we're really giving away our body. But it's in the text. I mean, that's part of the instruction of the traditional instruction. Someone else had a question? Oh yeah.
Legtsok, I think I'm doing this tumbling of a very long time. Suddenly I realized that it's very overwhelming. I agree with Shanti. It's kind of very. It makes you happy yet makes you a little disturbed. I think how I was able to control it, at least the disturbance part, is that I was focusing on the destruction of the negativity in me. So as soon as it comes in, destroys, I'm trying to visualize myself with from the darkness of fully light.
Yeah.
Completely light, feel light. It helps me to do that.
Yeah.
It helps me to reduce the overwhelmingness because you contracting all that with joy.
Yeah.
So I was able to do that. I was able to bring in joy and happiness. So I was focusing in that. Otherwise, initially I felt a little.
No, yeah, you're doing exactly right. I mean, that's exactly the right thing. When you think of the suffering of others coming upon you, it's not that it comes upon you and destroys you or something.
Suddenly it makes you realize.
It's destroying your self-cherishing attitude. It's supposed to destroy the cause of the suffering within you. the cause of your own suffering, which is this self-centered attitude. So you put it all on that. There's just one line from another mind training text called putting everything on the one to blame. Right? So the idea is, I think it's like that, putting everything on the one to blame. The idea is that what is to blame for all of our problems, all of our suffering, is our selfish attitude, our self-centered attitude. So all of the suffering we experience, and in this case, all the suffering we imagine drawing forth from other sentient beings, put it all on that, and then destroy that, and then you experience a sense of total relief. You know, relief, it's like as if relief from a very bad sickness suddenly disappears. And you experience this joy of being totally released from that cause of all your problems being destroyed. And then that sense of relief, then that's a kind of form of happiness, and you give all that away to others. So also, yeah, that's the way to do it. Someone else have something? Yeah, wondering.
For me, the practice of taking actually, I can't do it with very strong conviction because the law of karma is like, I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
So it's hard to get that conviction. Even though I want to, but
Yeah.
it's hard to get that conviction.
Yeah, but again, I mean, you don't have to have conviction that their suffering is going to ripen up on me. Yeah, I know what you mean.
So it feels a little bit superficial to me.
Yeah.
When I do it.
Yeah.
Because I know that it's not going to happen.
Yeah, that can be a problem also.
It's the opposite of Shantideva.
Yeah.
It's not at all underwhelming.
Right. Yeah, that can be a problem also. I mean, sometimes you have to put your logical reasoning, just put it aside and just visualize. So, but yeah, it's important to understand the main point is to generate more of a sense of like I'm willing to bear whatever hardships are necessary in order to benefit others. And that means like, you know, if there's someone who's depressed and you really want to help them, you know, and you're good friends with them, one way to help can be spend time with them and you know, talking and you know, doing things with them. But that's going to mean their unhappy attitude is going to affect you, right? So you have to be willing to just bear that. Or if you're someone who's really physically sick and you can really help them by nursing them, that means you have to be around this very sick person all the time, which means there's danger of you getting sick. So it's like, the idea is that in order to really help others, we have to kind of have more willingness to bear like some degree of their suffering, because it's going to cause us, it's not like their karma is ripening us, it's going to cause our own negative karma to ripen, but you have to be willing to accept that. Be willing to happily accept bearing the suffering of others in order to benefit them as a way of helping to free them from suffering. So if you can increase that kind of, yeah. But I mean, there's other ways it helps, just like thinking about the faults of our own self-cherishing, and thinking about how our own self-cherishing makes us kind of have negative attitudes towards others, and how unfair that is, because usually when we're irritated with, we don't like others, we put all the blame on them. The reason for us being irritated with them is because they're like this. Without thinking about how maybe we've been unfair or intolerant or impatient, unfairly impatient. No? So it helps also to just kind of be more kind-hearted towards others by thinking, you know, well, you know, they're maybe like a really unpleasant person to be around because of all these causes and conditions, which is not things they created, which is things that just happen to be like that. So it's not like totally their fault, and I should, have a more wholesome attitude towards them. Anyway, it helps to have a more wholesome attitude towards other people, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why Buddhism is true. True, yeah.
Does it say like the evolutionary process of psychology?
Mm-hmm.
Why did it start? Does it say something about that, like the single
Yeah.
Why did it initially started to develop?
Yeah, these days, like this book, I haven't read the book. So usually when I see a book I'm interested to read, I just Google it and then find out the author has given like TED Talks or interviews. So the author of this book, he gave several interviews. So I watched. So then you just get the essence of what he's saying without having to spend all the time reading the book. But I don't know. So in short, your question is, does he explain, according to evolution,
Why did it start in the first place?
why did evolution start?
Evolution of psychology.
The field? You mean why did the field of evolutionary psychology start?
Started developing, and then the
Well, not really, no. It's not like the brain started to develop, well, I guess you could say with single-cell organisms on the planet, and then the story of Darwinian evolution, according to biologists, is very different from, and how humans developed from that, and the human brain. I mean, and he doesn't talk about enlightenment, like he doesn't know what enlightenment is. He doesn't know about Buddhism that well, actually. He's just a very beginner, kind of. But he's not saying that evolution leads towards enlightenment. No, he wouldn't say that. Because as scientists, you totally, enlightenment, what is enlightenment? How do you verify that that exists? So that's something kind of metaphysical. That's more like a religious thing. I mean, of course, but in Buddhism, we have reasons of logic to establish that enlightenment is possible, that enlightenment does exist. So that's totally different. But the Buddhist story of evolution is also very different from that of the physical sciences.
Well, Buddhism explains why the first music started.
Well, but according to Buddhism, there is no start, there's no beginning. Like, there's no beginning to an individual person's continuum, there's no beginning to, like, things exist. There's no beginning to the universe, like this universe. Well, this particular universe, it started at a certain point, but it's not like there were not causes before that. Everything that is changing moment by moment. So, like, well, most things in our universe are, like we are, it has to arise from causes. Like, every person, everything, like this thing, if they're not the causes of, like, copper and being smelted and a mold to cast it like this and a person who's doing that, then this thing cannot be produced, right? So every physical thing in the universe is like that. You can't have a physical thing just arise out of nothing. That's not, I mean, that shouldn't be that difficult. There's nothing very complex or profound about that.
If you take it about a human being.
A human being, yeah.
So how do you explain it?
Well, so a human being has mental aspects and physical aspects. You have your body, we have our bodies, right? So where did our body come from? Did it just arise out of nothing? No, it came from the cells of our parents, and then those cells reproduce, and they're nourished by water and nutrients and blood and so forth, and then those cells grow to a body. But it's not like, so there's a first moment of our body, which is like at the moment of conception, but that didn't just come from nothing. Like those cells existed in the bodies of our parents before that, and then they came together in our mother's womb. Right? So every physical thing is like that. It has to have a cause that precedes it. Otherwise, you should be able to have physical things just appearing out of nowhere, with no substantial cause, no specific cause. But that's impossible. So for that reason, the physical universe doesn't have a beginning. I mean, well, it has a beginning in as much as like a human body has a beginning, but it's not that there are no causes before that. The causes have to precede that. So like, like the physical beginning of the universe was the Big Bang, you could say. But according to Buddhism, there had to have been something before the Big Bang, probably a big implosion, which resulted in a big explosion or something like that. So, but there had to have been something that comes before that. So the same with consciousness. Every moment of consciousness has to have a moment of consciousness that precedes it, that comes before that. So yeah, so there's no beginning. So then, why do things begin? There's no answer really. Like why did everything begin? There's no answer. It's just the way it is. It's not that it began. It just arises from a beginningless past.
Also, if there is law of karma, there should be a beginning.
No. According to the law of karma, then every result has to have a cause. Every result has to have a cause that precedes it. So according to the law of karma also, there's no beginning to the creation of karma. But then if you look at one particular instance of something, like this universe, why did it begin? Well, you could say because through the force of karma. Because there were sentient beings who had created the causes to exist in a universe like this. So then that resulted in a universe like this being produced, arising.
In fact, in science, so I'm not able to recall the exact name of the scientist, but one of the Indian scientists in physics, he says that some general assumption is this Earth or the universe started with the Big Bang. And his claim is in order to the Big Bang, before Big Bang, there must be a cause why that Big
Right.
previous to that.
Right.
And for that previous Big Bang, there was a previous Big Bang, so there is no beginning.
Some modern physicists starting to assert that. 20 years ago, you never heard that kind of theory, but these days, that kind of theory is coming more and more.
I think quantum has brought about the whole this inability of an infiniteness. Because you cannot. It's very difficult to relate.
Yeah.
I mean, even grasp the concept, quantum, whatever the understanding they have at this point of time, they're still trying to figure out. But that's one of the things that, time is beginningless. So you cannot really go single point of time and such.
Okay. Yeah, that I don't know. I'm not sure how quantum theory has a bearing on this time. I don't know.
What's law of thermodynamics? It says energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but it doesn't explain actually where energy came from.
Oh, right. Oh, interesting. I forgot that.
Even mass, conservation of mass. You can't destroy or create mass. You can only transform it into energy. That will
Right.
be
Energy to mass energy.
Right.
But it doesn't say actually where it came from. For example, in the universe, we
Right.
know that there are a lot of energies around us
Right.
in the universe. So it just transfers from one state to another state.
Right. So if the Big Bang just arose out of nothing, it would defy the first law of thermodynamics. As they say.
So they should have been universes before.
Right.
Or in some form of energy before, which can convert it to the universe.
Right.
But science never explains where energy comes from, how it was created first time.
Yeah, because that's considered like something beyond science. Well, because you can't measure before the Big Bang. How do you make an observation to determine what was there? That's kind of the problem from a scientific point of view.
So, Legtsok, it's a weird question, but do you think, according to our infinite rebirths that we are supposedly taking, is that possible that there were other beings like this is a human physical being, right? There are other beings
That existed before?
yeah.
Yes. Easy. Right. Yes.
Something like that. No?
Yeah, of course.
I don't know.
According in the Buddhism cosmology, this universe that we experience is not the only
Not the
universe. There can be
universe,
many other universes that exist at the same time.
Yeah.
That can be slightly different. But also, according to Buddhism, just as, before this universe began with this Big Bang, there were countless, because time is beginningless, right? So there are countless, other universes that existed in the past. And so there are many, human beings have existed, also in the past, animals, sort of. It's kind of like in samsara, every possibility has already been exhausted. Like everything that's possible to happen has happened, and as long as samsara exists, everything that's possible to happen will happen also again in the future, except things like that, except enlightenment, basically. Because one argument would be, well, it's possible for every human being to become, for every person to become fully enlightened, so why hasn't that happened? Because, well, basically, because there's very specific and very difficult very specific effects. It's a very specific set of causes that have to be accumulated to create that result. So in some instances of some people, they have become enlightened. They've succeeded in intentionally bringing together those causes and then producing that effect. But and it's something that can happen, so it's possible to happen in the future. So in that way, you wouldn't say everything that's possible to happen has happened, because, of course, one of the possibilities is everybody becoming enlightened, and that hasn't happened yet. Because if it had happened, then we wouldn't experience suffering as we do now. But is it a short question? Or?
No, it's a long one.
Can you just ask me after the session? Because we're on the 8th, 9th. We finished step 8 and 9. We just have 3 more to go. No, just 2 more to go. We finished. Yeah, 2 more to go. Yeah, just need 10 and 11. So I just want to finish those 2 steps, and then if there's time, we can spend more time on questions after that. So you can ask me after the session. Okay. So the step 10 is very short, right? So we've spent time on 8 and 9. Giving and taking, so out of love, loving concern, loving kindness, giving away all of our happiness, all of our roots of virtue to others with the wish that may they be well, may they be happy. and then out of compassion, seeing the suffering others experience, and wishing to free them from it, thinking, may all of that ripen upon me, and specifically may it ripen upon my self-centered mind and totally destroy it. Right? So then what follows is, it's called the extraordinary concern, or extraordinary attitude, whereby, so this is step 10, where we think, may I myself, and it seems kind of redundant when you combine giving and taking together with loving kindness and compassion. Anyway, the step is just thinking, may I myself cause all sentient beings to be free from every form of suffering and have every happiness up to full enlightenment. May I cause that to happen. Right? So that's the extraordinary attitude. Not only wishing may me or some other people be free from suffering, thinking, may all beings be free from suffering, and may I myself make that my personal responsibility. So the main difference is a sense of personal responsibility, thinking, I'm going to take up on myself the responsibility to free every sentient being from every form of suffering, and I'm going to take upon myself the personal responsibility to bring every happiness up to full enlightenment to every sentient being. Right? So it's this, that's why it's called an extraordinary attitude. It's this profound sense of personal responsibility for this kind of amazingly vast aspiration. Yes?
If we are so overwhelmed even with one-to-one of taking on their suffering, and, I mean, if we simplify it and say we take on, when we did that Tonglen, like when I did it years ago, I said I take on the sufferings of my sister, because we had a court case and she was running to lawyers and this and that.
Okay.
And I'd give her whatever happiness I had.
Okay.
So if it is at that level, of self-cherishing, maybe one can do it. But as Rajiv and Shanti pointed out, and even I said that about the laser beams, and when it is so strong, then how can we, when it's a one-to-one...
Then you can't. Then just leave it.
What I'm saying is, then the next level of what you're talking about, of taking on so many people's suffering, how would that be possible?
It's not possible. So there's levels of degree. So if you really feel like, oh, this is something totally impossible for me, then one way to do it is just think, well, why is it not possible for me? Or, you have to just approach it at whatever kind of stage you're at, right? So one way to think, is that really possible for anyone? You could ask that question and say, is it really possible for anyone to have that kind of attitude, and how do they do that? Or you could just meditate on the previous steps. Just meditate on trying to generate more, loving kindness for the people you can. Think, what are the limits of my loving kindness? Who is it that I can have a genuine wish that they have happiness? And who is it that I feel like it's really difficult for me? So what are the boundaries? What are my boundaries? And how can I kind of push those boundaries a little bit? What's a small step I can take so maybe someone who before I felt like I really wouldn't want to, I really couldn't generate the wish that they have happiness. But maybe is there some way I can find to maybe include that person also, include some aspect of that person. So whatever boundaries you have, you have to be realistic about those. And I think you are, Think, this is really too much for me. For me to think like that is really totally unrealistic. So that's fine. And there's no problem with that. We each have kind of different limits, right? So recognize where the limits are, and then try to think, how can you kind of extend those a little bit more? And that's progress. That's the way to make progress. Yeah, so for this meditation and thinking, may I take upon myself the responsibility to free all sentient beings from suffering and give all sentient happiness? If that seems unrealistic, then just leave it. You don't have to, don't do it. Just do one of the previous steps. But, or you can just kind of imagine, well, what does that really entail? What does that mean? How can people actually generate that attitude? Why, you could think about it more intellectually like that, instead of actually trying to generate the attitude. But the 10th step is to try to generate that attitude. But of course that comes on the basis of having taken on board a lot of other reasonings that go before and accepted those, right? So of course we're not all at the stage of having accepted all those reasonings. So just analyze. But let's spend a couple minutes just trying to meditate on that, however way seems most useful for you. Okay?
Chapter 1.
So this is extraordinary attitude, right? It's what we're meditating on, thinking the way I described. Okay, so just for a minute or two, meditate. So again, visualize all sentient beings seated around you. Your father of this life on your left, your mother on your right. I'm sorry, other way around. Your father of this life on your right, your mother on your left, and so forth. Okay, we can stop there. So then the 11th step, the last step is, and it follows very naturally, very easily from this 10th step. So whereas the 10th step is this generating a sense of personal responsibility to free all sentient beings from suffering and establish them in perfect happiness. So then the idea is, well, in order to actually be able to do that, what do I need to do? What kind of person has the most ability to be able to benefit sentient beings in this way, to free them from suffering and establish them in perfect happiness? Then the idea is, well, in order to do that, oneself has to be free from every fault, free from every ignorance, free from every fear, free from every selfish greed or desire, free from every even the trace of enmity for anyone. So oneself has to be free from every mental affliction and free from every obscuration to knowing everything that's possible to know. Right? So one's own mind has to be, on the one hand, free from every limitation, and on the other hand, has to have perfectly developed generosity, altruism, tolerance, patience, enthusiasm, and joyous energy, meditative concentration, and also wisdom, understanding reality, and the ability to know everything that's possible to know. So whatever on the one hand, whatever faults it's possible to eliminate, one has to eliminate all those faults. Whatever positive qualities it's possible to develop, one has to perfectly develop all those qualities. So that is a person who's done that, which is in short a Buddha, an enlightened being, a fully awakened being. They have the greatest ability to work for the welfare of others. So seeing this, then one thinks, oh, then I myself, because I've taken on myself the personal responsibility to free all beings from suffering and lead them to perfect happiness, then in order to actually do that, I must become fully enlightened. Therefore, I'm going to become fully enlightened. Right? And that aspiration to become fully enlightened for the purpose of benefiting others is the Bodhicitta, is what we've been aiming to, the mind of enlightenment. Right? So that's the 11th step, is actually the final result of all these preceding 10 steps, is this attitude. May I become enlightened in order to perfectly work for the welfare of all beings. Okay? So let's just spend a minute and try to meditate on that. Right? Beginning this. May I become fully enlightened and everything that entails in order to perfectly work for the welfare of all beings. Okay, so we stop there. So that is the kind of the goal of all these previous meditations, is to generate that attitude. So this is considered, the highest motivation of all the reasons you can have for doing anything. This is considered, among the sentient beings, this is considered like the highest aspiration, because it's an aspiration towards our highest possible potential. And it's totally selfless. It's not. Oftentimes people make the mistake of thinking that, enlightenment is, because it's the highest degree of personal development, that it's something that I should do just because, so I can achieve my own highest goals. But then it becomes kind of selfish, right? So the whole reason is in order to serve others, right? So if the reason for one's desiring to become enlightened is not to serve others, then it doesn't become bodhicitta. It doesn't become even something that makes sense, right? because I mean, in the purview that the cause of all suffering is a self-centered attitude, then for self-centered reasons to wish for highest enlightenment also, it's like internally contradictory. It's just kind of doesn't make sense. So this aspiration for highest enlightenment only really is like a valid aspiration, or it only is logically consistent, or only really makes sense, and only is effective if it's really out of an altruistic attitude, if it arises from a sincere wish to benefit others more than just oneself alone. Of course, incredible benefit for oneself just comes by the way, if you really have a sincere wish to benefit others. Yeah, so if you're interested and it seems kind of useful and seems meaningful to you, then all these steps we've been meditating on, you could spend a lot more time on each one and learn how to meditate in more diverse ways on each step. So I encourage you, if it seems useful, then continue. Try to, in your daily meditation practice, try to explore and work with and practice some of these different meditations. But if you can, always try to start with the aspiration of the motivation of bodhicitta, and then work on deepening it and strengthening it and stabilizing it, and make it more informed. And there's so many, also, I mean, intellectually, there's so many questions. Not only intellectually, but just there's a lot of questions that arise in relation to all these things we've been talking about. So there's a lot of, I mean, in order to make even our attitude of loving kindness, compassion, to make it universal, there's a lot of doubts that come up. Even to meditate on the first step of equanimity, there's a lot of questions that come up. So the more we can spend time reflecting on those questions, not just pushing them aside or not ignoring them, but actually letting questions come up and thinking about how can I answer these questions, what kind of responses, what kind of doubts come up, and how do I respond to those? How can I put those doubts to rest by finding reasonable answers? And all of that is important, and that leads you to more and more understanding. So, yeah. So again, if you found worthwhile, I'm glad I'm grateful you could give your attention to this time. I know it's quite long, 3 hours, but I think some of it quite difficult. But grateful you could give your attention, and if you found anything useful, then try to put into practice in the future. It definitely is only beneficial, not harmful for you and others. So let's dedicate now with a dedication prayer. Usually at the end, we rejoice in all the positive potential we've created, and then dedicate with a prayer. So let me find the next prayer here. What's the prayer at the end of the taking the Mahayana precepts from the Bodhisattva's way of life?
246.
32. Shantideva's prayer.
Yeah.
32.
Yeah, 32. Exactly, 32. We'll do the prayers on 32 and 33.
Actually, it's in two places.
Page 32 and 33. Everyone see? Page 32 and 33. Rajiv, can you help it? 32, 33. Yes, 32. 32. Right. There you go. So think of all the positive energy we've created together and rejoice. Think how wonderful it is. We've all made so much effort to generate positive states of mind. And then rejoice in all the positive things done by other sentient beings for one another. Think how wonderful it is, and rejoice. And especially think of all the positive energy, the virtue created by all the spiritual masters of the past, from Shakyamuni Buddha, before Shakyamuni Buddha, from beginningless time really, but especially during this era. Since all the spiritual teachings that have been passed down to us, and how that's happened through the hard work of so many, and perseverance of so many holy beings that have come before, and who exist now, especially His Holiness the Dalai Lama, So it's His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, other of our spiritual teachers, rejoice in all their virtue. So all this positive potential, I imagine, gathered together and then dedicate with these prayers. May the Supreme Jewel, Bodhicitta, that has not arisen, arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Because we skipped down to the next verse. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled, with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective, and all wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. May whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. So if you have any other prayers, then you can quietly add in your own mind. So may all of those, your wholesome prayers, also be fulfilled exactly as you wish. And then finally, may all of our spiritual teachers, especially His Holiness Dalai Lama and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, have long and stable lives. May all of our actions be only pleasing to their holy minds, and may they continue to turn the wheel of Dharma, teach us the path to enlightenment until samsara ends. Okay. So